We are here for part 2 of the Peapod Chronicles on the Fueled by Coffee podcast. Last time, I introduced everyone to my old coworker Mike, who I still keep in touch with.
Who is old but no longer a coworker.
Yes, and we talked about basically the nicknaming process of Peapod.
Because it was going down the roster of the people we work with.
Yeah,
everyone had a nickname pretty much. Anyone that
you may not have known it, but you had a nickname.
Yeah.
So when everyone starts at Peapod, they get a nickname, whether they know it or not. And I figured that's a great spot to start. So now that if you haven't listened to part 1, go and listen to part 1. It's a great episode. For part 2, we're going to start off with, now that you know the character, as Mike said, the roster of people that worked there, we should probably let you know what was Peapod? What did we do there?
Yeah, so what we did basically was pick groceries for lazy people.
Yep.
Episode over. All it was. Yeah.
Episode over.
So, thanks. Yeah. Part 3 will be what it was in Coopersburg. There's a giant. Behind the giant was just a big empty warehouse when I started there, and when I interviewed, and that became Peapod. And what they set up was 8 rows of dry products, and then there was 1 row of refrigerated and 1 row of frozen. So when we first started out, what we would do is we had these rolling carts, and we would shop 2 shops at once, 2 different customers. And then frozen and chilled would do frozen chilled, and then dry would do dry, and then they'd get put together, and then it gets put on a truck.
Yeah,
and it's called merging when you bring them together. And then it went to
the loader.
Yeah, then went to the loader, who would load it on the truck, and then the driver.
We covered. He was the Oranga man.
Yeah, the Oranga man, which we talked about. Cookie Gnome was in charge of that. And then it went to shopping 4 orders at once.
Yeah. Keep in mind, meanwhile, so chilled we started with 2, and then we went to 4.
Yeah.
Dry stayed at 1 order at a time until the last 8 months we were there. Then they changed that.
Yeah, so then it went to 4 at once in frozen and chilled. So you got your better shoppers, I was going to say better people, but yeah, fuck them.
Yeah.
Better people, because the dry humpers they couldn't make the cut mentally. Mm-hmm. So you ended up with a more diverse bunch of people as far as interests, and able to hold a conversation, and able to, have running jokes and things like that, which didn't happen on the other side. Mm-hmm. Then everybody went to shopping 8 totes.
Completely new system.
Yeah, completely new system. And the only reason any of that shit worked is because we made it work.
Yep.
We were told in a broad outline what some other place was doing that wasn't even set up like ours. So we made that work. So we were left alone to do whatever the fuck we had to do to make it happen.
The only time management really was concerned with us is which was every single day for the most part, if we were behind, because the trucks had to go out by a certain time, because if people's orders weren't delivered by a certain window, it was either they got it for free or the delivery fee was taken off.
Right, or it got canceled and they had to haul it back and break it down.
So management would come over, namely Triple Dub, always Triple Dub. She would come over and she'd start yelling at us. I actually was looking through old texts I had with Mike to try and jog my memory today, and there was one, I guess there was I don't know, she said something to the effect of, "There's 50 orders left and the trucks go out in an hour." And it's like, well, why don't you come fucking help us then? We're understaffed. Exactly. There's 4 people. You took 3 of our people that were picking and chilled. Yeah. So you got 4 of us over there, half the workforce. Then and they always left us with the shitty people too. They always took the good people, sent them over to the dry humpers.
Because the dry humpers could not keep up. As we've said, if you've listened to episode 1, there was people over there that did 40% of goal. Mm-hmm. And there were multiple ones. And there was a lot of them that most of them didn't even come close to 100%. Mm-hmm. So they were always behind. And they were only shopping 1 instead of 2 or 4. Mm-hmm. So that was going on. So we ended up behind.
So Triple Dub, we would come over if we were behind, or if anyone was behind, start yelling and screaming, because that's a great way to motivate your workers. I remember being there for about a week, and she was yelling about something. It was a Saturday shift, so of course there's no one working.
Yeah, I didn't work Saturdays.
And they got they would always take in more orders than we could handle. They wouldn't look at our manpower. They wouldn't. And a lot of times, I remember the schedule. Mondays were super busy, and Thursdays were extremely busy.
Yep,
and then
people loading up for the weekend.
Tuesdays were extremely light. Those were the days where we'd get out. In Peapod, the schedule may say that you're supposed to be there till 2. If we were done at noon, we left at noon. So it was a gamble on when you would leave every day. You know, don't make any plans, but you're supposed to leave at 2. But yeah,
the ones that wanted to get out early. So and they were all the people in Chilled and Frozen.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted to get out early. You had the option to stay later, make up your time, which the slower people wanted to do anyway. So we just wanted to get the fuck out of there because it was boring as shit to do in the jobs that weren't shopping.
And the thing is it wasn't a hard job. If you were mentally competent and you were, I guess, physically capable, it was an
which ain't saying much.
Extremely easy job to do. It was more so it was mentally draining. Like being there for 4, 5, 6 hours felt like I was there for 12 hours. Because for me, I mean, if it was a bad day, on days where we had fun, I'd go home in a great mood.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, though, especially towards the end when we were merging, and that was so physically demanding, I would have to go home and lay.
Yeah, but you pussy, you're 1/3 my age. Yeah. What the fuck?
I'd have to go home and lay in bed for half an hour because I'd be like, fuck, I am beat right now.
Yeah, you're literally 1/3 my age.
Yeah.
I'd say, well, why is this guy crying?
Yeah.
Fuck, I'm doing the same goddamn thing.
But
but it was you were just fucking, as a merge monkey, you were just grabbing these totes that were at least 10 to 15 pounds and as much as 50 and just grabbing them off, putting them on here, dragging them over here, moving over here, putting it there. It was great. It was fucking it was fast paced. It was a paid workout.
Yeah, basically.
But it broke you. It broke you down, but it made you stronger.
They should make that a new branch of the military.
Actually, it just broke you down.
Peapod.
Yeah, Peapod. There's the SEALs, and if you're good in the SEALs and you kill enough, insurgents, you get to move up and shop at Peapod.
So yeah, it started out super simple. You're picking in dry. They started you out on these short little carts that we called rubbers.
Yeah, because they were made by Rubbermaid.
Yeah, and in Chilled, we had like 2-tier carts.
Cannons.
That before the cannons, the silver carts.
Yeah, those are.
We'd leave crumbs. So basically, the way Chilled started, you would go through the frozen aisle first, pick someone's frozen order. When you got to the end, there was a chest full of dry ice, and you would have to scan out the totes that had frozen items, put dry ice in them. And then what we would do is we'd leave them in between Chilled and Frozen and come back for them after we finished.
It's called dropping crumbs.
Dropping crumbs. And we eventually got a system where when Mike was doing Pivot, which Pivot was setting up carts with totes on them, and then when people got finished, tearing them down, sending the totes off. And we got a system together where we would just yell crumbs, and Mike would come up with a rubber, throw the totes on, and take them back for us. It was one less step we had to do so we could keep moving fluidly. Then you'd go from Frozen, you'd scan in 2 new totes or however many new totes, because there were some Frozen orders where they'd order about 75 frozen dinners. Hungry Man guy.
Yeah, Hungry Man guy.
There was
we assumed he was a guy.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're in Coopersburg, so you kind of, I could see that.
Yeah, may not be a guy. But yeah, this person would get just like 3 a day.
Yeah.
Enough for 3 a day. It was just, it was, so it's their life. I don't give a fuck. They can, hopefully they're dead by now.
With those eating habits, I wouldn't doubt it. So then we go from Frozen into Chilled. The Chilled totes had gel packs in the bottom, which we also called Jalaki Packies.
Jalaki Packies. And they were full of gel blood.
Yeah, gel blood. They would frequently, because they just got tossed around, they'd rip open, and then they wouldn't freeze properly, or if they thawed out, the gel that was in them was repulsive, and I've gotten it in my eye one too many times.
I didn't even care. I'd bathe in it. I'd bring them home and cut them open.
Jerk off with it.
No, because that plastic that surrounded them. Well, yeah, I can see that, a handful of gel blood. I wouldn't use an actual pack because those edges are pretty sharp.
Yeah, no, I just meant the gel
I think it'd be
blood.
good like once. Because there's that whole, that frisson of danger, like maybe I'm going to cut my dick off. And this will be the best orgasm I ever had. But I can't see, if it worked out once, I wouldn't push it. It'd be like jerk off roulette.
Jerk off roulette.
Yeah.
We're coming up with new terms here on the Fueled by Coffee podcast. The Shower Boys of D Block. You'd go into Chilled. Chilled started out with drinks. It'd be milk and juice and coffee creamers, and you'd kind of move through there, and then you'd get into like cheese and yogurt. And if you were lucky, now a normal chilled order, when we had 2 orders at a time, was about 50 to 75 items between the two. When we jumped to 4, the average was about 100, was about 75 to 100, and then there were times we'd have 150, 200 pieces, and you never knew what you were going to get till you scanned in. So we would,
because otherwise a lot of people just say, fuck it, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, you could just tell when someone got a shit.
I get 17 gallons of fucking milk.
Yeah, that which happened multiple times I think that happened to me once, and I was like, fuck this job. So you'd scan in, and you could just see people would be like, oh my God, fuck me. And you'd be like, what, how many did you get? And it was once a week, there was an order that was always over 200 items, and you'd be like, motherfucker. You'd pick like no frozen items, you'd get into chilled, and the person would order like 73 strawberry banana yogurts, which yogurts were easy. They're small. You just start scanning them, throw them in the bag. Could fit probably 50 of them in a tote, and then they'd get like 73 strawberry banana and then like 50 or 49 black cherry yogurts, and then you'd be like, okay, well, there's over half the order right there. So if you were lucky, the yogurt section, you'd get stuck.
I thought you were going to say if you were lucky, you'd get to the pork section, and
well, generally every order then hits the meat section.
Yeah,
and that's where I learned. As Mike said in the last episode, I thought he was the weirdest person I'd ever met, which I would say that still holds up, but at the time it was more of an intimidating thing. You're talking about Pappy One Hitter coming into work with the AR-15. I thought that was going to be you.
I wouldn't need a fucking gun.
When Mike trained me, which I'll tell the story then, I was like, this guy is going to come fucking shoot up the workplace one day. And then I just came to find that I just didn't understand him. And once I figured him out, I was like, oh, this guy's fucking cool. This is like my best friend at work. But yeah, we'd get to the meat section, and it always started with pork.
See, there's this whole thing that started like a lot of things in any workplace. I'm sure wherever you're listening, you have a job, and there's probably some fun shit that goes on there. But the pork tenderloins, I started calling pig peckers. Or pig pokers.
Or pig cocks.
Pig cocks. Yeah, if you want to get right down. They had multiple names. The really large ones were horse cocks / Clydesdales.
Yep.
So it became such a common thing that you'd hear someone like Crazy Crab, this young woman, go, I got 3 Clydesdales, I got 3 horse cocks. Hey, Mike, I got 3 horse cocks. Good for you, Crazy Crab. So and then there was different types of pig peckers. There was the bareback, which was just plain meat. There was barbacocky, which was barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
There was a peppercorn pig pecker,
mm-hmm.
and the most famous pig pecker of all.
Wait, you're missing one.
Which one?
Teriyaki pig cocky.
Teriyaki pig cocky. I knew there was another one. There's the teriyaki pig cocky, and then there was porky honeycock.
Yep, which Mike came up with a jingle for, of course.
Yeah. It was the most famous pig pecker because I had the entire song at one point. It was this, like if they'd bring kids into Peapod,
mm-hmm.
I would sing them the song of all the different flavors of pig cock we had. And then all I remember was the end.
It's Porky Honeycock.
Yeah, the most famous pig pecker of all. It's Porky Honeycock. And then again, because things just pop into my head, this was unlike Crazy Crab, this was a black and white cartoon in my head of a Chinese crime-solving pig with Porky Honeycock. And I went to Sassy Francis, who isn't my age, but she's probably in her 40s. And I said, hey, do you remember when we were kids and there was that cartoon about the crime-solving Chinese pig called Porky Honeycock? She goes, yeah, I remember that. I went, no, it never fucking existed. She goes, no, it did. I remember it. No, sorry.
One of the other pork products that you neglected to mention, we used to call them, which I couldn't remember until today when I asked Mike. It was called a pig face. It was basically it was a big, well, actually, no, that wasn't the pork shoulders. We had these big pork shoulders. I can't remember what they were called. But if you got one of those in your order, it was instantly just like, fuck me. Because it was a large 25 to 30 pound slab of meat.
It's a big hunk of pig.
But then they had these hams that looked like a pig face.
Looked just like a pig's face.
And so, yeah, there was the pig faces.
And you would slap that for good luck.
The rule was, which I started this, slap it before you pack it. If you got a big
like
ham.
Put a rubber on.
Yeah. Oh shit! If you got a fucking ham or a pork shoulder, you had to give it a nice 2 slap. I remember the one time
it made a great sound. Made a fantastic sound.
They must have, in the dry humpers, they must have been wondering when all this was. What the fuck's going on over there?
They always wondered what we were up to because we were laughing and yelling,
having
shit.
fun, and
they had no idea what's going on.
But yeah, you'd slap it before you pack it, and that became a trend. People loved it. There was one time in particular, I remember I slapped it so hard that it left a handprint in the ham, and my hand was just blistered red. That was the proudest slap I've ever had in my entire life.
It was such a fantastic sound. It had to be that plastic stretch taut across the pig's face, and then you'd whack that fucking thing. There's nothing in it, because there's like a Naugahyde couch here. That's not going to do it. It was just the best. This real loud, sharp crack, like some kind of porn spank. It was fantastic.
Oh shit! So yeah, that's it in terms of like the pork and the names. Then we'd get into like the deli section, which it was like the shit boys. Those were the famous. They were these rotisserie chickens that the deli would bring over to us, and the origin actually started with a worker there.
Yes,
which Mike knew him. I did not.
Yes, he became quite famous. He and I worked the loading dock one day just for a little bit. We were back somewhere. I think it was when we had when the freezer was broken. We had to go all the way to the back of the store, like a quarter mile away into Giant. And then he sat down because he was lazy. He had to go all the way back there to get dry ice and stuff from a refrigerated tractor trailer that was parked out there. And he got up and I go, you shit yourself, you shit boy. Because he got his khaki pants were all covered with dirt. And he looked like he crapped his pants. But anyway, this guy became very famous for eating an entire rotisserie chicken on his 15-minute break.
Yeah, and wasn't it Sunny D? Didn't he have Sunny D sometimes?
Yeah, he'd have like an entire quart of Sunny
Chef
D.
Boyardee ravioli as well.
2 cans of that, family size.
Yeah, all in a 15-minute break.
Well, if he didn't have the entire chicken. I remember when he did that, he goes, I can't believe I did that. And I go, dude, we all fucking believe you did it because you're a fucking slob.
So then the rotisserie chickens, they were disgusting. Oftentimes they had limbs blown off. It was like they just got back from war.
Skin, burnt, undercooked. You'd see where it was torn, like at the wing, it's still pink inside.
It was always an extreme. There was never a medium. It was always undercooked or burned, limbs ripped off, skin ripped off. And then I came to find, after I had been working there for about 3 months, on the label that they put on them, it said SB.
That's right.
Which stands for store brand. But I said, no shit. It's a shit boy. Shit boy rotisserie chicken.
It's official.
It's official branding. So there were the shit boys in the deli section. This is on one side of the aisle. On the other side of the aisle, there were what we called kid killers. The Lunchables, that was another big order. There'd be people.
Oh my God, people! If you hate your kid, you feed them Lunchables because it's absolutely.
They get like 4 of each kind.
Yeah, it's absolutely unnutritious but easy. I don't have time to cook for my children. Yeah, you're right. You fucking don't. You hate your kids. Hence the kid killers. Oh my God. Yeah, because Big Gator would eat what? Like wasn't he a fan of the kid killers for his own personal?
He ate the uploadeds.
Oh, the uploaded.
The uploadeds. Those are the upgraded kid killers. They basically came with like powdered drink mix and turn your water into Kool-Aid. That unnecessary calories added. Be like
because I would not go in the break.
Dessert, a sandwich of some sort.
Yeah, well, yeah, an industrial produced sandwich. I wouldn't even go in the break room because it was so depressing. It was the same griping fucking people in a different fluorescent lighting with another, instead of a concrete floor, it was a fucking industrialized tile floor with this bullshit on the wall. It was supposed to make it feel like a game room.
And they said, oh yeah, we have a foosball table. In the 2.5 years I was there, I not once saw anyone use the foosball table.
There's probably no fucking ball.
Yeah.
I would go out and look at a pond out back.
Yeah. Mike would go and meditate.
Yeah, I would meditate in my car if the weather was bad, or I would go stare at the pond and meditate there. But there was a carp that I was fond of. I called him Sucky Fucky.
Oh.
His sucker was all messed up. So.
See, I never heard about him because I never experienced the pond.
No, see, what an idiot, because it was great.
Yeah, I sat in the drab break room.
Yeah.
And for the longest time,
then you quit taking breaks because it was so bad.
Yeah, I would sit by myself often, awkwardly on this couch between John, which was a coworker.
John.
Yeah, we never had a nickname for him.
He looked like a rockabilly fan.
Yeah, and Matt, that poor, sad guy that Triple Dub would pick on. He was always very insecure. Seemed very unsure of himself. He was probably in his late 50s.
Yeah, he was an emotional mess. He was like, like some kind of, like a fucking mousetrap. He was like an emotional mousetrap. This, like the slightest thing, and you knew he was going to snap and start bawling and curl up in a corner. Yeah.
So I generally sit between the two of them very awkwardly. And then I started talking to Babada, and then Counselor Doug befriended me, so I'd talk with them. And then eventually I would sit with DJ Morgan, and I became pretty good friends with her.
Yeah, you guys would do those fucking, I don't even know what you call it. Like the little pictures,
the memes,
the memes of
with Brad and his glowing eyes and his because Brad,
you even came to me and said, "You got to watch this guy eat."
Well, that's the thing.
I actually went into the break room and just stood at the edge. You walk down a hallway, and there was the break room and all its fucking unglory, and I just stood there and watched Brad eat for like 30 seconds and went, Big Gator, and I said, that's enough of that.
Yeah. That was when Brad was or Big Gator. I gotta keep calling him Big Gator now. He was a man of mystery.
Yeah.
I just thought this guy was a big fucking slob because he didn't really talk to anyone. He's very socially awkward, or if he did talk to anyone, it was like, I know. And he would sit there and he just shoving food in his mouth,
mouth open.
There was one time he came in with Buffalo Wild Wings. I think that's when it started because Deej was like, Brad had wings, and I was like, nah. And he's like a mess, eating his wings, and he'd buy like 2 ice cream sundaes out of the freezer. He'd pound one down, eat half of another one.
To his credit, for the second Dorks at Dorney, he had lost a shitload of weight.
Yeah, he looks great now, and
he looks thinner.
Well, yeah, but great as compared to what he was. Right. And he'd eat like a whole ice cream sundae, eat half of another one, just throw it away. He was the type of guy, I remember one time he brought in a whole Tupperware container, and the motion I'm doing right now is probably like an 8x8 Tupperware container full of like spaghetti. And he said, yeah, my sister made this last night. And someone said, Brad, you got to save some for everyone else. Like, good. Like, he brought all of the leftovers, ate half of it, threw the rest away.
Yeah, he liked to throw food away from what I heard.
So, yeah, and he was just... wow, he was a sight to see eating. But then we found out Brad was a great guy. That's no excuse for his eating. Because I'd still go in the break room and think, Brad, what the fuck? What are you doing? But as a person, as a worker, he was a great guy. So why were we talking about the break room? So there were the shit boys, there were the kid killers, which is what Gator loved to eat.
That's right, we got on Gator.
Okay, so after the deli and meat... oh, also in the deli section, here's another blast from the past. Simply Potatoes.
With an ingredients list, 16 ingredients long.
Yeah. It was basically this bag of shitty shredded potatoes. Simply Potatoes. It's not simple at all.
I definitely changed the way I eat working there. I've been eating healthy for half my life, which is about 150 years. And but eating there and seeing the absolute shit that I would pick for people to eat, I was just astonished. And I just realizing what it was, and that people were stuffing that crap in their face because it was convenient, not because they didn't have time, because you can eat real food in about the same amount of time, but just because they didn't fucking feel like it, and because they liked salt, sugar, and high fructose corn syrup and all that kind of crap. I couldn't stomach it. I couldn't stomach the thought of it because I wouldn't eat that shit.
Yeah. So Simply Potatoes. After the deli section, this is our favorite section of the aisle, produce. And it wasn't until, I don't even know, the last year and a half, it was there sometime in 2017, we coined the term PPPP, which was prostate pleasuring produce from Peapod.
I think it got as long as like 6 P's for a while.
Yeah.
I can't remember what they all were.
Yeah. And, there was also pre-packaged prostate pleasuring produce.
The hothouse cucumbers.
Yeah. What the fuck were those? Those were called something else.
Were they?
I think they had a name. I broke numerous ones. I'd pick them up because basically the hot houses, those were like cukes that were about 2 feet long, and they were dolphin nosed for some reason, pre-wrapped. And I'd pick them up and I'd wave them around, and a lot of times they'd snap, and then I'd just put them back.
It's pretty amusing when I would be down at the end of the aisle in the pivot where I would reside, and a young lady would hold up a cucumber with a nice bend in it and go, "Look at this pee I have."
It started between the two of us. It just like everything. It started between the two of us, and then it would spread like wildfire. Slap it before you pack it. Peepees. Oh shit. There was also 701. We would yell, that spread. There was a guy who'd come on the loudspeaker and he'd say, "Derry, call holding on 701.
Thank you.
Thank you." So then we would start yelling, 701. Thank you.
And it just became 701.
It got to the point where whenever he would come on, everyone in Chilled would be, "Thank you," yelling at it in harmony. But I digress. Yeah, peepees. That started by Mike and I judging cucumbers. And so
for their potential pleasurability of the prostate region.
Yeah. And we would look for the criteria, I think, would be a slight bend.
Yeah, had to have the right angle,
girth, and if they were waxy or not for easy penetration.
Well, yeah, there was beginners.
The child section, cute guy.
That's right, cute guy.
I'm sitting here looking at Mike with there was I don't even know what the brand was, but it was a
bullshit
pre-wrapped cucumbers, and there was a little African American child holding up a slice of cucumber to his eye.
The cute guy.
He was cute guy. Those were like the kid PPPs.
Yeah, there was also PPPs that were like training.
Yeah.
Training pieces they were very small and narrow at one end and progressively large out to like pro grade.
Shove the whole thing in. And the thing is, to some things, some cylindrical, I guess, vegetables and fruits qualified as PPPs, and that was cucumbers, occasionally zucchinis, but those were usually pretty shit.
That was a rarity. Plus the stem on the end.
Yeah, and the squash. The squash and zucchini always looked like shit. The cukes were the go-to, and the hothouse cukes, and then there was also the butt plugs, which were these grapefruits that had like it almost looked like a tit. You remember those? We called those the butt plugs.
Yep.
PPPs. So that became every day. Hey, Mike, look at this one. Or once Mike was merging and he was not within eye shot from the chilled aisle, I would go out of my way to take it out of the aisle and yell across the room, "Hey, Mike!" And then I'd hold it up.
I give you thumbs up or like the waffling motion, like
yeah. PPPs. And I'm trying to think. It was usually just cucumbers and grapefruits. Because then there were the prepackaged ones, and then there were apples and other sorts of produce and shit.
There was always all that stuff was so bad.
Yeah, they'd always give us the worst produce. And then the thing is we'd get a BIPI, which a BIPI was the Broken Promise Initiative.
BPI. Initiative.
Yeah.
It was index, I thought. We can make it an initiative.
I think there was a paper on the bulletin board that said
There's
initiative on it.
I've never worked in an environment that was like being in fucking communist Russia or North Korea where there was so much fucking propaganda everywhere that it was all fucking bullshit.
Oh, shit.
About how much they cared about this and that and the other, like the employees and the customers, and nobody gave a fuck about anybody or anything.
And it was funny because
in the company, that is.
The people who picked the produce to put out on the shelves for us to pick and pack for the customers, they would give us the shittiest produce. And then a broken promise, a BIPI, was when the customer would complain, usually about something minuscule, like, "I didn't get my spoonful of ice cream," or
I used to care about that, and then I got one, and it was the customer complained that the skin was on the salmon.
Yeah.
Excuse fucking me. I didn't know I was supposed to skin your goddamn salmon.
Yeah, we would get in trouble for stuff like that.
Which we had nothing to do with. It was picked in a different departments would pick the stuff and send it back.
Yeah.
And then we would pick it from the shelf that we had. But what a load.
I got one the one time for a missing head of cauliflower, and I thought, this thing's just, not as big as my head. I have a very large head. but it was probably about half the size of my head, and I'm thinking, how the fuck would I forget to pack that? I remembered putting it in a bag and putting it in the tote. So somehow the drivers would fuck up all the time.
Drivers would screw stuff up.
Our eggs would be broken and we'd get in trouble for that, even though it's from the driver slamming the totes on the ground, or even before they get shipped out, the loader would slam them on the ground. So it was probably...
Oh, we all threw totes. We threw the fuck out of those totes when they had stuff in them.
I just remembered too, for the eggs, we had egg papers.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever tote you put your eggs in, you're supposed to put this slip of paper in to let the loaders and the drivers know.
Handle with care.
And to be slamming them on the floor, throwing them in the truck.
Yeah. No, everything got thrown.
So, yeah, that was the chilled experience, I would say. So
let's go to your first day, because I really don't remember much about it.
So my first day at Peapod, I was a dry humper. They had Pam. I don't know if she had a nickname.
No, she was just
the uptight Christian woman. Yeah.
God, she was horrible, so judgmental and so uptight about everything.
Yeah, she trained me, and of course, your first day, you're not going to pick 100% productivity. By the end of the first week, I would say I had it down pretty pat. Even in dry, though, when you're a dry humper, it's so hard to hit goal just because the aisles are so narrow. There's so many people in them at a time. So many
lame people in your way.
And you're snaking your way through. And it was really hard to hit goal over there. But I got pretty good. For about 3 weeks, I was a dry humper. And then...
anyone who had any talent was moved over.
Was it Colleen? Was that her name? She says to me about 3 weeks in, hey... do you want to do chilled? I said, yeah, sure. I mean, why not? Because I'm there thinking, yeah, I'm proving myself. This is my first real job.
Such a badass.
I'm gonna move up. They like my work, and
they love my hair like Party King.
Yeah, that was at that point. I didn't look like a Wolverine yet. I was a baby faced. But yeah, so then the following week, I remember walking in. And basically, you would figure out what you were going to be doing that day. They had a giant whiteboard, and on this whiteboard, they had how many orders we had, who the lead was. So basically, the managers did nothing. It was the lead who ran the show.
Yeah, who was just an hourly employee.
Yeah, the
who
lead
was stupid enough to give a fuck.
Who the loaders were, how many units there were, and then they had dry and chilled, later frozen when they split them. Dry and chilled, they had a list of names of who was where. I walked in one day, did not see my name on the dry side, and I thought, do they not know I'm supposed to be here? Look to the left, and it says, Mike, train Matt. And I said, oh shit, that's right, they're putting me over here. And at first I thought Mike was Todd. Because I was like, because the thing is, when you're in dry, as we had said previously, you hear all sorts of things going on, and you have no clue what's going on in chilled. So when I was a dry humper, I would hear yelling. I would hear just
a lot of profanity.
Yes, just things. I'd see them slamming crates on the floor, and I was like, "What the fuck are they doing that for?" I was about to learn. So I go over, and Mike comes up to me, who at the time was in his, you're still in your early 60s, but early 60s, and I'm like, oh shit, this is Mike, the yelling guy, the guy who's yelling all the fucking time. This is okay. Just very upfront, and as I said, I thought he was very bizarre, and he's like, oh yeah, he's going on and dropping. I thought you were a manager. I thought you were like the manager of the chilled side, because coming in, if nothing's explained to you, I didn't know what a bippy was. I didn't know, no one said, oh yeah, this is where your mistakes are. You were like,
I know, that's why I made sure I trained everybody to understand that shit, because nobody in management ever told anybody anything about how the system worked.
Like, I remember I walked in my first day, and Dr. Dave, best manager, but I walked up to him, I said, hi, my name's Matt, it's my first day, and he was just kind of like, he doesn't even he just turns his head, kind of looks behind him, and okay, we'll get someone with you soon. And that was basically it. And Pam showed me how to pick. Mike's like, do you know what a bippy is? Do you know where the bippies are? No. And he just said, don't even listen to this shit unless a manager comes to you and says, hey, your shit's fucked up, don't worry about it, which was the case. Then we're walking through. We had a nice little romantic walk through frozen and chilled.
Hey, look over here, this is cold, that's colder, let's go to the end, this isn't as cold.
And he's talking also. He's like, yeah, I'm a fucking egalitarian. I'm this, I'm that. And then he's like, that's a fucking pig cock. That's a horse cock. It's a Clyde. And I'm thinking, like, who? I'm like, what the fuck? At this moment, I'm freaked the fuck out. I'm like, how is this guy? Like, this is not professional at all.
Oh, I know. It's terrible, isn't it?
And it wasn't until I picked up on the culture, I became a part of the culture, that I really understood what was going on. And I found out, hey, you don't have to be so serious at work. You can make fun at work. And so then Mike went through a couple orders with me. And I remember he said, oh, you think you're good? And it's like after 2 or 3 picks. I was like, well, I don't. He goes, oh, you're fine. I'm just going to cut you loose. You're fine. Okay. I was scared shitless.
Yeah, I think I said, if you got any questions, ask them. Don't ask them.
Yeah.
They don't fucking know anything, and they're jerks anyway.
And I was scared shitless. And then being over there, I just kind of integrated myself into that culture, and they saw that it's interesting. You were picking more orders in chilled, but it was more streamlined than in dry, so like it made it easier to pick faster.
Yep.
Plus
the people were more competent, so they'd stay out of your way.
Exactly. I was exceeding my goals. It was 195 units per hour. I was picking about 210 to 240
and
units
you got to
per
come
hour.
over and fuck around and talk about music.
Exactly. And so Mike started talking to me because he realized that I wasn't an asshole and I was a good worker.
Well,
and,
I don't know about that.
Well, I'm an asshole, but and then Amish Hardcore, aka Todd, he started talking to me, and from there, this was the summer. So I started June of 2016. So throughout the summer, this happened, and then in August or September, we formed the Shower Boys of D Block.
Yep.
And that started by they had upgraded our carts from these like waist height carts to what we called a cannon, which was. And now
it's tall as me, so like 6'3", 6'6".
Yeah, and had 3 shelves on it, top, middle, and bottom. And the one day we were packing up orders. Mike used to pick orders with us until they moved him to Pivot. And I had stuck my head through the bars at the end of the cart to like grab something, and he goes, wait.
I go, that looks like in prison where those guys stick their head out and they put the mirror out to talk to each other.
So we stuck our heads through, and we were singing prison tunes to each other from behind the bars, and then somehow it became joking about ass rape and prison rape, and
nothing funnier than that.
The Shower Boys of D Block. And so that was Mike and Todd and myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just the 3 of us. And
then other people, Counselor became our counselor because he did that hard time, remember? Because he killed the mayor's daughter in a drunk driving accident, so he did some hard time. So he understood our situation, man, because he did time. All this is bullshit, by the way, because he did time inside, so he knew us, so we could relate. And I think we also, wasn't Deej like a nurse?
I don't remember that.
She had I know we had. That's the only way we could get female participants, because they had to be part of the administrative process in the prison.
Yeah, and it also started the whole shower thing, the Shower Boys part. That started because Mike had this crazy house in downtown Allentown, and he'd always talk about how big his shower was. And it started out somehow the one day I brought up about Todd would sing to Mike in the shower, and so put 2 and 2 together, you get the Shower Boys of D Block. And so that's where all that started.
We thought it was a lot more amusing than it sounds now.
I know, yeah. I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, why is this so? That was our life, though. Like, we'd go to work and you'd step out of reality and into an alternate universe.
Yes.
And that's why it was so amusing. Because as we've said in episode 1 and in this episode, it was a brain dead workplace, very mentally draining. That's why we made this alternate universe. And when you walked into work, it was like, oh, okay, going to my second life now.
Yeah, it was really fun, but it became really annoying because it wasn't egalitarian. I mean, there was people who shouldn't have been there that were there forever, and then we were there working really, really hard and not really getting anything for it.
Yeah, and the first year I was there, we maintained the same system, same checks and balances, aside from Mike getting moved to Pivot once we jumped up to 3 or 4 orders at a time. And then a year in, I remember it was November of 2017, they switched, or I guess I had been there for almost a year and a half. They switched over to this new system of picking, which Mike touched on, that was 4 orders at a time. So they switched over to this new system of picking where we'd pick
8 totes.
8 totes at a time.
It could be 8 different.
Could be 8 different orders. Could be 3 different people. Who knows? And it was almost better in a way, because with the old system, as I said, if a tote got full, you would have to scan it off, take it off your cart, put a new tote on, and if you didn't have empty totes in your cart, you were walking back and forth to wherever there were stacks of totes, and you would have to, rescan it in, and it got to the point where people, sometimes you'd have in front of your cart, which was already about 7 feet long, you'd have like 2 or 3 layers of totes you'd be pushing.
Yeah, pushers.
So
well, the thing was, it was good because it was a lot more fast paced, but that was what made it bad, and that was my breaking point, because then the people that couldn't do their job to begin with really couldn't do their job.
Yeah.
And for the limited amount of space we had, we really needed everything to be right on fucking point, or it became extremely difficult for the people that gave a shit, like me and Matt 323 and Big Gator, when we made sure he was paying attention, and Nemesister, because then it was just that much harder because there was that much more work, and so it just became really, really fucking annoying.
Yeah, and the new system they switched to, it was 8 totes at a time, and the great thing about it was there was no switching totes anymore. It got frustrating at times because the computer, even though it knew the weight of items, it would be telling you to shove stuff in the totes that you knew either didn't fit, or the totes would be overweight. Some would be 50 pounds, 60 pounds, whatever, and then that puts extra strain on the merge monkeys. I picked this system for about 2 months, and then Mike was like, I need to get you up front merging because you're the only competent person that I know could do this. It would make my life so much easier. Showed me how to do it, and that's pretty much where I lived out the rest of my tenure at Peapod, was a merge monkey.
I loved it up there.
And
I just took charge. I didn't give a fuck what anyone in management said. I just did what I was going to do.
You ran the show. Mike's very good at coming up with systems to make things work. There was a certain amount of trucks that would go out per day depending on how many orders we had. And half of our trucks were broken, so a lot of the time we'd be waiting for trucks to come back to bring totes back.
Yeah, there was route numbers, and it was evens and odds. So the thing was, you'd start, and you'd have to load the last stop. The first stop had to go on last, which makes sense because otherwise you got to dig through it. So we had to get all this stuff, and I had to line up. Like each stop had its own cart, and then had to go through, and then odd on the left, even on the right, and just go through all that stuff. And the goal, to make it fun, was to get as many trucks going as possible. So it was a regular thing to have 4 trucks stacked on the rubbers, the little carts, to keep them going, and occasionally 5 and 6. And there was one day that Big Gator and I touched on, and it was Dorks at Dorney, that we got actually 9 trucks started,
which is ridiculous to think, because some days there were
some of those, there was 20 to 30 some stops.
Yeah.
So that's 20 to 30 Rubbermaids, 30 rubbers, the small carts with shit on them and stacked up. And so you're talking all this stuff everywhere, and to keep all that straight, like this is truck number this is truck number that. And then to get up, we were at 8, and then Nemesister was trying to get one loaded so that we couldn't get to 9. And I told Brad to go back and grab a crumb from the 9th truck and just bring it up and set it on the floor. And then we declared victory and high-fived and hug with a little, pat on the butt, 'cause Brad always liked.
Mike would run the show, and once he showed me how to do it, then it was like we were Team BMW. That's what they called us, because we both drive BMWs. So, or I guess we called ourselves that. And then I'd always draw the little BMW logo next to our names on the board. But if you walked in and you saw we were there and we were getting shit done, people were like, oh, okay. And it's funny because no one on like the chilled side, no one went to management to ask questions.
No,
they came to us.
What was the point of going to ask them fuckers? They didn't care.
Yeah, like Mike and I, we were like the management, because we kept track of like how many orders we had left, how many units we had left, when trucks were coming back, when trucks had to I don't want to say get loaded or go out, but like there was like the main room of Peapod, which, as Mike said, we'd set up like 2 to 4 trucks in if we had enough carts and if we had enough space. Because sometimes you'd get a truck where there'd only be like 10 to 15 stops on it, and that's nothing. That's probably like 1 row of carts.
Yeah, you got over 30, it was a shitload.
Yeah, and then there were the busy days like Mondays and Thursdays where the first 2 trucks would be 38 or 40 or 43 stops, and then it's like you barely have enough carts to set up for that. Because the other thing too with merging, it's all resource management, because the chill humpers also need carts to pull their orders off, which this is another thing, the dry humpers being lazy as fuck. They would pull their large cannon cart up full of their totes, and they would just leave it, and we had to unload it for them. And a lot of the time, so with the new system, you didn't just scan a blank sticker and it assigned the order. We had sheets, another waste of paper, sheets of stickers, and you would sticker up the totes. And I came up with the most simple fucking system for it, where you would just put the stickers on in the order that they were on the sheet. Yeah. So then when you go to pull them
no one
off,
had ever thought of him.
You pull them off backwards. So if you start from top left to bottom right, you pull them off bottom right to top left.
Which was fun because you do it just as fucking fast as you could.
Yeah.
Everything was at breakneck speed. It was awesome.
And even after 6 months, these motherfuckers could not wrap their head around that.
No.
And they'd come up and I'd be like, okay, 507, 506, those are the truck numbers. And I'd be like, wait a second. They set their shit up backwards. Or I'd be like, wait a second. They fucking just mixed how do you mix all these up? Like, they'd set up like the first 2 stickers in the center and then the next 2 stickers on the outside.
Well, and on top of that, they were supposed to be pulling their own and they never pulled their own.
Yeah, they would just leave them for us.
They would just leave them. Just so more. Yeah, the managers would just go, well, they can't really do it. I go, I can make them do it. Mm-hmm. I can get them to do it. And you're not going to want to have me do that.
Mike almost fought the twerker multiple times over that.
Yeah, I was hoping.
We'd leave his cart there with the totes on it, and then he'd come around, an hour and a half later after doing another round, and he'd come out and his cart would still be sitting there, and he'd be like, I'm not doing that, bro. Watch me twerk.
A fucking loser. Another guy. A lot of people with bad attitudes.
Yeah.
Stupid people with bad attitudes.
The chilled humpers, they were always on top of their shit. They pulled their own totes. We would label the carts at first. And it got to the point where Mike and I were so good, we would just go and not even count and be throwing shit on carts and just be like, okay, we got it figured out. And then there'd be the Oranga man who'd be mixing up trucks and carts because he was incompetent.
Yeah, he'd grab evens off the odd side, odds off the even side.
Another term that I actually had written down, which is it was a merge term. We not only had the rubbers, but if we ran out of rubbers, we had the R2 flat twos, which these were god awful to use. I mean,
I don't know what they were supposed to be. They looked like R2D2 got run over by a tank. They were a type of cart, so I called them R2 flat twos. And they had no way to steer them. They were supposed to come with handles, but they ordered the wrong ones with the wrong handles. So it was just a flat, terrible skateboard that we had to try and use that looked like R2D2 run over by a pickup truck.
Yeah,
a tank. They were awful. We would make do. Yeah, those things had a mind of their own. You'd push them, and all of a sudden they'd cut left, cut right.
I think we're gonna cut this.
That's enough of this anyway. This is boring shit.
So yeah, part 2 is ending here. Check back in another 2 weeks. We're going to have the conclusion of the Peapod Chronicles Season 1 finale, Fueled by Coffee podcast.
And we'll make sure we don't go into the minutia because it's pretty fucking boring.
See ya on the next episode of the Peapod Chronicles.